so many leaders think that because you have a title that your employees are supposed to trust you. And it's probably one of the biggest mistakes you can make. I don't believe that you can be too empathetic at work. So I want to show that caring. At the same time, I have a fiduciary responsibility to deliver results for the organization. And I can't let that not be delivered. As a leader, don't show them how fast you're pedaling underneath, because the way you show up is how your team's going to show up.
Hi, and thanks for joining us today. Today, I have a pretty special guest. Her name is Tracy Nolan. She's a Senior Vice President at Humana, and we're exploring what makes teams remarkable. What a great word. And how leaders can stay human-centric, which I think was a big focus of hers, while making hard calls in high-stakes environment. So let's dive in. Welcome, Tracy. Thank you so much for making time. And I've been looking forward to this conversation since we had a chance to speak earlier in the year. We have a mutual friend, Tissa Richards, and she was right to speak so highly of you. She said you're one of her favorite human beings, and that you have a keen mind for human-centric leadership. I thought that was just such a wonderful phrase to have someone use about you, a keen mind for human-centric leadership. And I'm so excited to dig into that with you today.
Well, Karen, thank you for having me here. And Tisha is very kind and a wonderful person who I just adore and think she has so much to give to people on resiliency and in the workplace and personal. So thank you for having me on, and I'm excited to dive in.
Great. So before we begin to talk about human-centered leadership, tell me a little bit about your role at Humana and what you're focused on right now.
So, Karen, I like to describe what I do as I'm like the handshake or the first impression that my team has with any of our prospective members or members who join us. We're primarily focused on Medicare, Medicaid, overall as our products that we sell, and I run the sales distribution for the organization and strategy overall. So love what I do, love that I can help members with their health outcomes and providing the right type of service for them from an insurance perspective. Really important part, and a part that people as they age in particular, is really a major factor of what they are looking for. So if I can help in any way, my team can help make that easier for customers or members. That's what we're all about.
Oh, great. We both live in Florida, and so we are acutely aware of how important that is, especially in our community. And I love I guess it's an analogy. I always get analogy and metaphor confused of the handshake. What a warm, welcoming gesture. So Tissa said something that really caught my attention. She said that your team is remarkable, which is a great word, but I'm going to say not a very common word these days. And that is remarkable because of how you lead them. What do you think is different about how you lead versus maybe what you see other leaders do, or maybe just what you don't want to do that wouldn't be directionally correct for remarkable teams?
Well, again, she's wonderful to say that. She did get exposed to my team. I had her do a keynote last year, and she got to meet a lot of the individuals, which was fantastic. I think, for me, there was a switch that happened probably say after maybe the first 12 to 15 years in leadership, which was that I always thought what a leader should be. But when I realized that a leader could have both, I could be myself and be this caring individual because I care deeply about people, but I could also be this tough leader that, delivers results. And if I can combine those two things together, I think that's what really changed my leadership skill and how I lead. And, I always know that people come to work, I believe, wanting to be successful. Nobody really wants to get up in the morning and say, I'm not going to be productive. I'm not going to be, great at what I do. People want to do well. And so it's helping them figure out how to bring out the best, or actually, I always say there's a capacity circle, push outside of what they think is possible. And so I lead with that thought process, is like, there's people want to achieve more than probably what they even think they can do. And how do I bring out that from a leadership style?
Oh, I love that. I have on my desk something a friend gave me, which says play bigger. And it's a reminder to me to think bigger, to think outside the circle of what I would be comfortable in terms of thinking is possible. And so how do you help them do that?
Well, so again, people who worked for me are going to tell you, if they were talking to you, they'd probably say Tracy's a tough leader, because I am one who will see talent and I will push them into uncomfort zones. So in other words, I had an experience, Karen, where when I was a newer leader and I had just taken over a role, and my boss, who I didn't even realize at the time was really a sponsor to me, he said, hey, you need to go do this presentation in front of the CEO. I think I had been in the role 10 months or 10 weeks. And he's like, you need to go do this and tell him the strategy. And of course I said, well, let me run through what I'm going to do and how I'm going to do it and what I'm thinking about. And he's like, no, this is on you. You've got this. And he literally did not review anything, because he had more confidence in me than I had in myself that I could get this done, right? And I am a leader who will give those opportunities, or put people in uncomfort zones where I know they're going to do great. They may not know they can, but I'm willing to take that chance with them. I'm gonna be there in case things don't go right, but I know that I put them. So a lot of people appreciate me after the fact, because I am one who sees talent, and I like to push them a little further ahead than maybe they think that they're ready for. But I find that really brings out, people start to build that trust and confidence in me that I'm going to be there for them, but they know that they also are being put in, they're not sitting in a comfort zone all the time. And so that's how, and then that builds a two-way trust, right? Which is so important, because the other thing I believe is that so many leaders just to think that because you have a title that your employees are supposed to trust you. And it's probably one of the biggest mistakes you can make, because you have to build that. Like, I have to trust the employees who work for me, but I need to work really hard to build that for them to have trust and confidence in me too, right? It's a two-way street.
Yeah. Well, I have to own that I had a visceral reaction to rescinding 10 weeks in. It was a little bit of thrown into the deep end of the pool.
Yeah.
And thinking it was the deep end of the pool, but if I just stood up, it would be okay.
Yeah, I wasn't sure what that was all about. I was a little nervous, but then I realized that Ron really, really believed that I had the right stuff and I could do it, right?
Yeah. And it was a big, deep lesson that let you do what you do today. So great. So specifically about healthcare. So as I think about healthcare, you're operating with real urgency, because people's health is at stake, as you mentioned a few minutes ago. How do you keep your team from living in sort of permanent crisis mode? Because so much actually is urgent. I have a lot of clients today who work in something I think of as sort of ambient urgency, right? Everything is urgent. It's just it's the pool that they're in. Anyway, how do you keep your team from living in sort of permanent crisis mode?
So we really ground in, key fundamentals of what we are accomplishing, or what we need to accomplish for the year. But with that said, like any business in any, whether it be in healthcare, or I spend a lot of time in telecommunications right now, everything is changing so fast. And, whether it be technology, whether it be, just overall, scenarios out there. So, the world is changing. So I always say that you're never standing still. You're either moving forward or backwards. So I focus on what we need to do to move forward, and I don't wait for something to happen. I'm always working on how do we handle change and how do we work through change, and getting excited about change versus how you can get so paralyzed by, oh my gosh, the next thing's coming down the pike, or we need to do something. So if we stay ahead of it a bit, where when I've taken over teams, if they're performing really well, they think, okay, I can just keep doing the same thing over and over and over again. And I keep saying no, because next year something's going to be different, and we've got to be able to do it different. So I try to get change to be an energizer, not a paralyzer, because it can be if you're not. And I've had teams where they were performing so well, the team was great, and I come in and I'm like, hey, we're going to start changing things up, and they're like, why do you need to do that? But I find that if you can get rigor of being able to accept and adapt to change, that is really that's super powerful overall from a performance perspective, but also from a cultural perspective.
Yeah, I think that's one of the hardest things about change management, dealing with change, is when you're in crisis mode, it's pretty clear things need to change, right? It's hard. It can be denied by some, but it's hard to deny. But when things are going well, and people aren't just seeing enough of the bigger picture or the long game, there can be a sort of a sense of complacency about, we just have to keep doing what we're doing and we'll be fine, and not take the risk of making a change. But to your point, people have to be able to see, we're taking this risk, because not taking the risk is more risky in many ways. And have you brought, I'm sure you have, how have you brought people along from a place of, I'm a little afraid of getting into this, to actually sort of embracing change and maybe looking forward to it as a positive?
Yeah, I can think of one individual who works for me right now who I wanted him to step out of a role that he was currently in and take on probably one of our most critical roles, that, if you looked at it from the outside, the success rate of doing really well in it was probably pretty low at that time. And, he had been in this role forever and performing really well. And I'm like, hey, I want you to move from this role over to this role. And I know I spent probably 2 weeks of multiple conversations. I know he had multiple conversations with his wife about it too. Like, hey, do I really want to do this? Tracy's telling me to try it. And he jumped into it. And I would tell you now, he's going to tell you it was the best thing he's ever done, because the success rate of what they've been able to accomplish, the things he's learned differently about leadership through a really hard project. He is, and I've seen him develop. I'm so proud of him, because I've seen this, this leader blossom. He already was a great leader, but now, like, he is incredible because of it. And I think, Karen, the other thing you were saying, which, sparked a thought process, is I've managed through so much crisis. 9/11, I flew into New Jersey that morning. I ended up being stranded in New York, but I was working for Verizon. And at that time, we needed to get Wall Street up and going, and we needed to get cell phones to the emergency workers. And those are the days where you used to program phones, and you didn't just have a bunch of phones somewhere. So I worked, for, over a week, just trying to help get phones to emergency workers. And then COVID, I was working during COVID, and I had all the stores at T-Mobile across the country for Sprint at the time. We were merging with T-Mobile during the pandemic, and I was trying to figure out how to keep all the stores open, keep the employees safe, keep the customers safe. And through crisis, I think the thing I learned the most is, well, first of all, you have to go with the best information you've got. You're sometimes, if you're not in a crisis mode or you're not going through change, sometimes you got to manage without having all of the data that you want, right? And then so you're going to trust your gut a little bit. And then the second piece is a lot of leaders, because they don't have the answers, don't have that communication with the frontline employees or the employees of the organization, because they don't want to admit that they don't know they don't know, right? And they're taking some risks, right?
Yeah.
So I find in those situations, I'm known to over communicate. So I will hold open bridges where I just get on the phone and say, okay, this is what I know. This is what we're doing, what questions, and leave it for, if it's an hour call, I'll only have maybe 20 minutes max of conversation. Then I just let the line open and I let people ask me questions. And I know so many leaders who are so scripted for town halls, or they're so scripted. I prefer to just go in and be who I am and tell them what I can. And if I can't say something, I'm just going to say, hey, I'm sorry. I'm either legal's not, it's something from a legal perspective I can't say, or I don't know. Like, I will admit I don't know. And I find that really works. I mean, it works so well during change, but even crisis management. It's really just, it's okay to be a leader and not know everything.
Yeah. Well, thank you for your work during those crises on behalf of me and all the people that benefited from it. It was a hard time. And you were, of course, going through that yourself personally, what we were all going through while making it possible for all of these essential services to continue. I think you touched on something that's important, especially important, which is around, you said earlier, I had this idea of what a leader should be, right? And then once I was a leader, I realized, that like didn't work the best. And it's this sense of a leader being omniscient, right? Of knowing everything, of having all the answers. And certainly I had my own aha moment around that. And I imagine many early stage career leaders have had the same moment where it's like, oh, okay, I thought this is what it was going to be, but it's really this. And it's more of me being a human being and just being able to say, I don't know. It's an important question. Let's make a plan to get back, or I'll get information or whatever. But I don't know. And how I think that in part inspires the trust you were talking about earlier, where you can be vulnerable enough to say, I don't know.
And sometimes you make a mistake, and it's okay as a leader. I know I had, one of my first staff meetings, my team jokes about it now, that I had with my direct reports when I joined Humana. And I went in with an assumption that everybody there knew who I was, and that like my intent was positive, and I went in with big ideas of change and all this. And I know now that, after we left the meeting, there were all these text messages going on about who, we really going to follow this leader? Like, I know that now, because a year later, they've all admitted to me that at that time they were like, oh my gosh, who is this person who's coming in? But again, I thought people would just know that a leader has positive intent, and I was there, and I didn't take the time to really sit back and hear from them in that moment. And I realized right after that meeting, like, okay, like I need to reset myself, because I was assuming, every other company I'd worked for, somebody knew me or people knew me because I had been in telco for so long. And then when you switch complete industries where no one knows you, you have to rebuild all that. And as leaders, it's important that we are so self-aware of how we're coming across and what we're doing. I mean, they all joke about it now. And, I would tell you, I think they really have fun with working with me, and we do some really cool things for the company and for our members. And but in the beginning, it's tough, right? Like a new leader, you got to be self-aware of those things.
So how do you know when your team actually understands what you're asking for, not just sort of nodding their head in meetings and then sending text messages around you afterwards, but that they genuinely get it?
Yeah. I think, again, I have a cadence with my team. So I definitely do one-on-ones with my direct leaders, where it's more of a casual, let's let's talk about what's going on in the business. I'm not micromanaging what they're doing. I'm really there for them. And I always ask a question about what can I do for you? How can I show up better? I do ask those vulnerable questions that a lot of leaders don't want to ask because they feel it shows weakness. But for me, having that, I don't really, I look at the people who work with me as we're working as one team, and I'm not big on hierarchies. Titles are titles, but basically, if I'm somewhere and I see somebody needing something, I'm going to jump in and do it. And if somebody tells me something, I'm not going back to some leader saying, "Oh, I heard so and so said something." Like I create this environment where we have a very open and positive feedback loop. And then I have 360s done on myself. Like I want feedback. Feedback is a gift. And earlier in my career, I tell you, it'd be like Karen, someone would say they're doing a 360, and I'd be like, oh no, what am I going to find out that somebody doesn't like, right? Now I'm like, what don't you like that I do? What can I do better? And how do I make you more effective at your role? Because that's my job. My job is to work for them. I've really shifted the focus. Like I work for my team, and they need to make sure that I need to make sure I'm giving them value.
Yeah, it's great. It's a big shift to go from a fear about getting feedback to welcoming it, and I appreciate that perspective. So I know you're on the global board of Dress for Success, in addition to your SVP role at Humana. These are two big roles in big organizations. How do you decide what gets your attention, and how do you say no or help your team say no?
So Dress for Success is really important to me. It's something I've wanted to be involved in for a long time. And Karen, when I made the decision to join Humana, I also made sure that they knew that I had this want to be on a board, and literally I seeked out to find an ability to be part of Dress for Success worldwide. I come from a retailing background, and while everyone thinks Dress for Success is all about clothing for women, who are entering the workforce, it's really about empowering women who can be able to be self-sufficient and take care of themselves. So it's much more than just clothing that we do, and really proud of the work that the affiliates and Dress for Success Worldwide does. And so for me, I didn't join a board my first 2 years with Humana because I knew where my focus needed to be as I joined a new organization. So I'm very cautious and deliberate on how I spend my time and where I spend my time. And I also am someone who, if it's important to me, I'm going to make the time for it. So I make sure that I have enough time for both, but I do say no to a lot of things, including when I get asked to mentor a lot of women, because I could probably fill my calendar up and want to mentor. But how do I find ways to give back doing things like this where people can hear some hopefully nuggets that they'll take with them? I highly prioritize my time just overall, and I teach my team to do that, because as an executive too, you could spend all your time in meetings and people will fill your calendar up. I actually fill my calendar up first with like 8 hours of sleep, 2 hours with, my husband at night, right? Like I literally, I fill it. I rather see a calendar full, but it'll have those things that are critically important to me. And then I fill in everything else around it. So that's how I do it.
That's wonderful. I think about that as I just remind people that you have to own your calendar. If you don't, somebody else will, and you may not like what you end up with, but you have to take control of it. So, high fives for putting those.
It's true. And I had a fitness instructor one time telling me to fill it all up, and I got all like almost hivey over it because I thought, oh my gosh, but they were like, no, fill it up with 8 hours of sleep, an hour of exercise, 2 hours with your husband, relaxing, your dog, you can take your dog for a walk in the morning, and then whatever else you have, Trace, is what you give, right? Like,
Yeah.
and that's important because I can get off balance, like many
Like
people.
that, right? Yeah. I mean, we're 100%, 110% will expand to fill the space that's allowed. And that's good because we like our work, right?
We do.
It's abundance. We have too many good things to choose from. So I wanted to ask you about a specific situation. I was in a meeting just recently where a leader said to me, I can't be so empathetic. My personal goal is to be less empathetic because it keeps me from making good prioritization decisions. Like I want to do everything for everybody, and sort of this tension between being human centric and making hard calls. How do you think about that? And can you give me an example of when you had to navigate it?
Yes, and I would tell you, I don't know if I told you the story, Karen, but there was a time where I was not, I was having some health problems, and I remember my doctor thinking that it was due to some work pressure and things, and he said, "You're just too nice. I can't imagine you in corporate America because you're just too nice." And that has stuck with me in the sense that is absolutely the opposite. I remember, if I find out somebody is having a hard time with somebody in their family sick, or somebody passed away, or maybe they're having health problems, like I actually note that and I make sure that I reach out to that person, a week later or whatever, because I don't believe that you can be too empathetic at work. Now, there's a piece so I want to show that caring and that's something that really is important to me. At the same time, I have a fiduciary responsibility to deliver results for the organization, and I can't let that not be delivered. So I have a balance between both, and it doesn't mean that I do not let poor performance go untapped because I'm being empathetic. I'll be empathetic about the things that are important to the people and what they're doing. But if someone's not performing, I'm gonna go ahead and either figure out why. Is it the wrong role? Do they not have the skill sets? What is holding them back? Because again, I still go back to the fact I'd say 99% of the people don't come to work to do a bad job.
Mm-hmm.
And so, that piece, I have a responsibility to deliver. So I show the caring side, but I also show that I'm here to deliver, what I need to deliver from the company perspective. So I make sure that the empathy doesn't stay in the way of me being able to get the results that we need from overall. And I recently had a situation where, an employee was having a difficult time performing in a role. And, you have to just have that, again, be willing to have those tough conversations. Something's not right here. It's not working. What do you think the reason is, and how can I help you either do better, or is it time to look for something else? So you can have empathy, but you also have to keep your fiduciary responsibility there. So it is can be hard, but for me, I realize there's two pieces here, and I make sure that I balance them both.
Yeah. Good insight. It's complex. If it wasn't complex, it wouldn't be senior leadership, right? And I think where I ended up with him was something along those lines of, these are not either or conversations, or places for you to be. You can both hold on to your priorities, and make sure that they're communicated and clear and acted on, and you can care about your people. Don't care less about your people, right? That's not the right answer.
That definitely is not.
Yeah. So last question, if you could give one piece of advice to a leader who's overwhelmed, whose team feels like everything is urgent all the time, and I know you have worked in that environment. What would you tell them, someone who's really feeling overwhelmed?
I tell you, first of all, take a deep breath, right? Like take a deep breath, because how you show up is how your team's going to show up. And a lot of that, anxiousness, it's kind of, someone said to me the other day, I thought it was a great example, is, glide on the pond like a duck. And as a leader, don't show them how fast you're pedaling underneath if
Yeah.
you are in that situation, right? Because the way you show up is how your team's going to show up. And then I just say, just prioritize. I know that sounds so, vague, but literally take, break it down, what has to be done in small bits, and then celebrate the small wins to the larger goal that you're going to get to, because you will get there that way. If you just throw it all out, everybody's going to be overwhelmed. Give them a small goal, get that goal done, move to the next one, and you'll calm people down, and people will accomplish more that way.
Yeah, 100%. Thank you so much. I really appreciate your insights, your time, and your thoughtfulness today. And I'm sure that our audience will appreciate those insights as well.